I was supposed to be babysitting my younger sister, but my focus was glued to the television screen in my bedroom. My dog, Sheriff, a heavy-set rescue, was fast asleep on the floor beside me. It was around midnight when his head suddenly snapped up. His ears twitched, locking onto a frequency I couldn't hear. I paused my game and listened. Dead silence. I assumed it was just a raccoon outside and brushed it off. But Sheriff didn't. He leaped up, bolted through the half-open bedroom door, and stopped dead in the hallway. Then, the barking started. At first, it was just his normal, loud bark. I yelled at him to quiet down, afraid he'd wake my sister. But the pitch suddenly changed. It morphed into a vicious, guttural snarl. The kind of deep, aggressive growl a dog only makes when it's cornered a predator. Then, I heard the frantic scraping of his claws against the wood as he charged down into the dark basement. My stomach dropped. I crept out to the hallway and stood at the top of the stairs, staring down into the pitch-black abyss. For a full, agonizing minute, I was paralyzed by fear. Finally, I slammed the light switch and slowly descended the steps. Sheriff wasn't barking at the window. He was standing directly in front of the closed laundry room door. The hair on his back was completely raised, his teeth bared in a violent stance. I didn't dare touch that doorknob. I trusted my dog enough to know that someone or something was standing right on the other side of that thin piece of wood. Driven by pure panic, I scooped up his heavy body and bolted blindly back up the stairs. Just as I reached the top step, my blood ran freezing cold. Creak. I heard the heavy laundry room door slowly swing open. I slammed the basement door shut and threw the deadbolt. Pressing my ear against the wood, barely audible over Sheriff's frantic barking, I heard the terrifying sound of heavy footsteps slowly creeping up the basement stairs. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. When the police finally arrived, they caught a man trying to violently smash his way out of the basement window. As the officer shoved him into the back of the cruiser, he locked eyes with me through the glass, giving me a dead, soulless stare I will never forget. If Sheriff hadn't warned me, that man would have made it all the way upstairs. Mandy was a Beagle Pointer mix, and the absolute sweetest, most harmless dog you could ever meet. She wouldn't hurt a fly, but when I was 15, her sudden shift in behavior saved my entire family. Mandy always slept in my bedroom, but one night when I walked in to go to sleep, I was greeted by a deep, vibrating growl echoing from her chest. I playfully asked her what was wrong, but she just kept her head lowered. I turned off the lights and tried to sleep, but for over an hour, she constantly broke the dead silence with that same menacing rumble. By 2 a.m., the growling suddenly stopped. I opened my eyes in the dark. I could just barely make out Mandy's silhouette. She was standing dead center in the room, her body completely rigid. She was staring straight up at the elevated closet, the one that housed the access door to our crawlspace attic. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. I flicked on my bedside lamp. Mandy didn't even flinch. Moving as quietly as I could, I slowly pulled the closet doors open and looked up. The wooden attic hatch, which was always tightly shut, was cracked open. A cold, stale draft was bleeding down into my room. Panic set in. I bolted down the hall to wake my dad. He didn't take it seriously until he walked into my room and saw Mandy still violently growling at the ceiling. Being a massive guy, my dad stepped directly into the closet to investigate, completely unarmed. Seconds later, my dad screamed at the top of his lungs. A deafening crash of shattered glass and tumbling boxes echoed from the narrow space, followed by a sickening thud. Suddenly, a giant of a man, easily 6'5", burst out of the closet, gripping a heavy steel hammer in his hand.
Before the intruder could even raise his weapon, Mandy launched herself through the air, sinking her teeth deep into the man's forearm. The stranger shrieked in agony, dropping the hammer to the carpet. My dad lunged out of the darkness, tackling the massive intruder to the floor and pinning him down until the police arrived. When they finally dragged him away, the terrifying reality set in. You don't hide in a family's attic at 2 a.m. with a steel hammer if you just want to steal a TV. If Mandy hadn't kept me awake, none of us would be here today.
I was only 11 years old, and my little brother was 8. It was late, and the neighborhood was dead quiet as we walked our dog, Buster, a massive husky German Shepherd mix, around the dark block. As we turned the corner, the flickering yellow glow of a street lamp revealed a tall, thin man standing perfectly still on the sidewalk. He wasn't walking, he was just waiting. As we approached, his face stretched into a wide, unnatural smile. He stepped forward to block our path, trying to start a conversation, but my gut screamed that something was very wrong. I tightened my grip on Buster's leash and pulled my brother past him without saying a single word. We kept our heads down and quickened our pace. A few moments later, my little brother tugged my sleeve, his voice trembling. "He's following us." I glanced over my shoulder. The man was right behind us, keeping the exact same distance, that terrifying smile still plastered across his face. Every time we sped up, his footsteps sped up to match ours. We were only a few houses away from our front door. I told my brother to run, but before we could even break into a sprint, my heart completely stopped. I heard a sudden, violent scuffle behind me, followed by the muffled, choked scream of my little brother being forcefully yanked backward into the dark shadows. Before I could even react, Buster erupted. He didn't just bark, he sounded like a rabid wolf. With a violent jerk, he ripped the heavy nylon leash straight out of my burning hands and launched himself into the dark. I heard the terrifying sound of Buster's jaws sinking deep into the man's leg, followed by an agonizing, blood-curdling shriek. The man dropped my brother and stumbled backward, blood pouring onto the pavement. The screaming woke up the entire street. Porch lights flicked on as the man desperately limped away into the night. The police caught him a few blocks over, trailing his blood down the sidewalk. I don't know what that smiling man had planned for my 8-year-old brother, but I know for a fact that Buster is the only reason we both made it home that night.